as I was going and auditioning for the part of Wayne Arnold, I was a working actor, doing different TV shows and cameos and different big movies and stuff. And at the time, it was an audition, just like every other audition. You have no idea of what's going to work and what's not going to work. And nobody knows what something is going to become until after, it's withstood or not, the test of time. And does it hold up? So it was just another audition. And I remember going out for the part of Wayne Arnold, and there was a bunch of, people there. It wasn't quite a cattle call, but, there was a bunch of people there. And I studied and prepared a bit for the audition, but they didn't tell us that it was taking place in the 60s. I didn't know that there was a narrator. There was a bunch of kind of important signature devices in the show that were really not disclosed to us. So I just went out there and kind of read it straight. And I didn't think that I did that well. When I had talked to my mom and dad, they're such great parents, and they're always so encouraging, never pushy, supportive. And they said, how do you think you did? And I said, I don't know. I didn't feel good about it. In fact, I think I blew it. And like, hey, if it's not this one, it's the next one. Just good positive words. And about a week later, I get a call back. And I had to remind myself of what it was for, because I kind of had forgotten about it. And you gotta have thick skin. As an actor, you're going to hear a lot more no's than you are yeses, and you just gotta kind of keep moving along. So I was like, oh yeah, that's that thing. And I went on it, and they still didn't tell me everything. But the room got a little smaller. We were in a different part of the building at the time. It was New World Productions, and we were kind of more in the corporate-y end. So I could see that the opportunity, and it was escalating up the chain of command, so to speak. And I didn't think that I did anything in particular that was great or memorable, but I did remember that they worked with me a bit more. On the first one, I kind of just did it. I think I did it twice, and then, thank you. But on the second one, they started giving me some direction, and they started telling me not the unique elements of the show, but just a little bit more of what they wanted from that character. They wanted me to kind of keep being, a little bit meaner, a little bit, more sarcastic, a little bit less caring, a little bit more nonchalant, just a little bit more cruel, torturing your little brother, and just enjoy. I think it was just enjoy being mean, not just being mean. I think that was kind of like the big note was, relish and really enjoy being mean, as opposed to just being mean because you're mean. You know what I mean? And I did it several times. And then I was like to my parents, I think I did pretty good, on this one. And I followed their direction, and, let's see. And then about 2 weeks later, get a phone call back, and they wanted to bring me to network. They wanted to bring me to, to ABC. And how that process looks is that they pre-negotiate your deals before you go. So you go there already with a deal in place that's totally negotiated. And, kind of the heartbreak, of that to a certain degree can be, you start already thinking of yourself, because you go through the motions of negotiating it. So you literally have in front of your face what it could be if you get it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, okay, here's like this lottery ticket, and here's the prize you're going to win, and here are the numbers. These are the winning numbers. Let's just see if you happen to scratch them off, that day. So it's kind of, you're a kid, and I went there, and this was kind of like the final, this was it, So I think this was my third or fourth, time, and I remember meeting Dan Lauria. I remember meeting Dan Lauria in the lobby. And, he basically told me that unless you do theater, you're not a real actor, and that, he pretty much didn't even want to be there. This was going to wreck my life if I continued to be, a TV actor and not be a real actor, and I'll never be a real actor until I do, theater. And then he's like, yeah, good luck, kid. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all this now floating around in my head. It's going to wreck my life. I'm not a real actor. What am I doing? I was a little kid. I went in there, and I ended up getting it, and so did Dan. And I think he even said, he goes, you know what the bad news is? And I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, we're probably going to end up getting this. But that was the charm. Dan, he doesn't mean it, in a bad way. He just really has so much respect for, the theater. And it's not that he doesn't believe that TV actors aren't real actors. He just believes that you need to pay your dues and be in the theater, and that's where you hone, your craft. I think I did do a play one time, and I found it completely boring. And I think I even told him, I said, I did do, a play once, and he said, well, how'd you like it? I said, it was boring. I said, I did over the summer, and I wanted to be at the beach with all, with all my friends. And then he goes, well, you're not doing real theater till you're in New York. It was always this, this next hurdle that I had to jump, because until I'd be a real actor, I like to say that Wayne Arnold was the brother that you love to hate. Just as much as I enjoyed being mean, I think people, loved to dislike, the character in a fun way, because you were either that big brother, or you had a big brother, or one of your friends, you knew that guy, in one way, shape, or form, you kind of knew that guy. And there was, a turn, kind of midway, through the series, as the character, began to mature and got older and was looking at things outside of just kind of ruling the hallways at school and torturing his little brother. It was exploring girls, and it was exploring, jobs, and exploring, more of the family dynamic, and really seeing what Wayne was going to make in his life, what would kind of become of Wayne. And we saw him, come up short in love. We saw him come up, short in school. We saw him come up short, in all of these places. But the one place, that had, more than, many moments of shining through was that he had heart. Wayne Arnold had a lot of heart. And also a lot of times the way he shared and showed that heart was through him being mean, or through him, being cruel, or, that just kind of meant he liked you, to a certain degree. But there was a deep love, and there was a deep caring, for his brother, and a deep respect, for his father. And he loved his mother, and he kind of didn't understand, his sister, and it was usually very surfacey, with Karen, because they kind of just came from two different planets. But that was his sister, and he was a lot kinder to her than he was to Fred, to Kevin. But one of my, I have several favorite episodes, of the show, and for many different reasons. But for Wayne, there were episodes like Hiroshima Mon Frere. That was an episode where, we got to see Wayne, care for this, this gal, and then of course, get rejected, and some of the complexities that went along with like it's so clunky, like at that age in that adolescence of how you show someone you like them. You know, it starts off, you know, pulling their pigtails, punching them in the arm. I mean, and then it evolves from there. I mean, and Wayne was a late bloomer as far as him being vulnerable, you know, and caring. When I got my driver's license, when Juliette Lewis, who's a great guest star, you know, played my girlfriend, and it was the driver's license episode, and I had to drive, you know, Kevin around, and I drove him to the mall. And when I drove Kevin to the mall, I dropped him off at the way outskirts of the mall. And every time he kept trying to get back in the car, I would give it gas, you know, and lurch it forward and lurch it forward. And even though we would go back and forth and torture each other as much as we could, when it came down to it, whether it was with the parents, whether it was with, you know, girlfriends, whether it was with whatever it was, Wayne and Kevin had each other's back. It might take a long way to get there, and you know, me calling him, you know, butthead a million times, but at the end of the day, the brothers had each other's back, and there was an unspoken code of the brotherhood. I have no idea. Scrote was this word that actually, for the first couple times I said it, truthfully, I didn't even know what I was saying. And then finally, like one of the writers, I'm like, what? Like, why does everyone laugh when I say this word scrote? And then he whispers in my ear, and I'm like, oh! And then I was like, oh. And I'm like, I don't want to say that. You know, I became very self-aware, you know, of the word. But yeah, I put butthead and scrote on the map. One of Wayne's many accomplishments. That was it. Yeah, I'm surprised Standards and Practices at ABC didn't like redline scrote. One of the things that was so amazing about the show was the music. And I think that one of the things that everybody, you know, used to talk to me about when they would recognize me from the Wonder Years is how brilliant the music was. And as amazing as the writing was, and as amazing as the directing was, the show would not have been, the Wonder Years would not have been the Wonder Years if it wasn't for that music. That music was essentially the soundtrack of our soul. That music was just as important of a character as Kevin Arnold. That music was just as important of a character as Wayne Arnold. That music set the entire tone for how you would make your audience feel. And at the end of the day, as storytellers, as actor, producer, writer, director, whatever, we're all storytellers. And the way that you tell a story to maximize the emotion and to really put your viewer in the mindset of your main characters is through music. And that is really what set our show apart from so many other television shows, was the quality of music from some of the biggest artists in the history of music was in our show. And it was so amazing to sit back and watch, because when we were filming it, we didn't get to hear the song. So the new experience for us, because we lived it, we lived making the show, you know what I mean? So you would kind of think, oh, well, we did it, we don't need to, you know, we'll watch it. But it was such a treat to be able to watch the show, because the one surprise that we didn't know how it was gonna, you know, all end up was the music. So for me personally, the music was such a big treat in the show, and watching it for the first time, because that was when we, as the stars of the show, got to hear it. And it was just so brilliant from some of the artists that we had on the show. I mean, from Joe Cocker, you know, on down. I mean, we had some of the most brilliant artists of our time who were all storytellers, you know, in and of themselves. I mean, you know, just brilliant. So for the fans and for us, and just the show, the Wonder Years, would not be doing it justice to be able to give the fan the ultimate experience without having the music on the show. So it's so exciting for us to actually have this product be represented in the way it was originally intended to be. And this is 25 years in the making. And finally, you know, we get to bring it to life, music and all. I think that our characters, to a certain point, could be any kids at any time, but there was a certain, not only innocence, but a certain vulnerability that the nation had, you know, in that era, as they were seeing things like war for the first time on television, and they were seeing, you know, sons and daughters, you know, brothers, husbands, children, you know, families that you knew, that, you know, were getting told that, you know, their kid, you know, isn't coming home from the war. And that was a common thing in that era, where there was somebody in that neighborhood that got that visit, and the whole community, you know, rallied around them. And that was something that the war and violence and tragedy and death and all of those things hit your community on a local level, to the house next door. And that was something that, unfortunately, now, you never get used to, tragedy and death and all of those things. But it's not uncommon, to see war on television. It's not, the shock and awe of it in 2014 is not what it was in, 1966 or, whatever it is, or any part during the 60s. And they knew that tragedy could strike them. Tragedy could strike, their neighbor, someone they loved, their relative. Everyone as a nation was more vulnerable. So even though we could be any kids anytime, there was a certain generational innocence that not only, like I said, was our nation at, we had to carry that as actors on what was going on, at that time, as a society as a whole. Skip Cook was an incredible asset to all of us. Skip Cook was somebody that was there for us in good times and in bad times, and he ran that set, very much to protect the kids, and he kept us all safe. And we knew that Skip Cook wouldn't take any and that was somebody, he had a different level of intensity than Dan, because, Skip was like your Uncle Skip, and he was also like your big brother, but he was also, like the protector, of everyone, and he kept it safe. And, there were times even like when I would have to drive Fred in a car, and, I would do stunts, or, we would do, little things, never anything too dangerous, but even in the things that we would do, Skip really kept, everything safe, and he really looked out for us. And it wasn't just the cast that was family. It really was the crew too. Guys like Dennis, guys like Skip, guys like Bobby, a lot of them, and not to mention the producers and the writers. I mean, Bob Brush, Ken Topolsky, Michael Dinner, Neal and Carol, Tommy Shalami, just so many great people that came through our show. Matthew Carlson, Mark Perry. I mean, all of these, guys that really just became a part of your life and your family, because let's face it, you'd spend more time on the set working and they as your family than you would with your real family. So that becomes, your family. So I just want to make sure that I mention that the family environment wasn't just limited, to the cast. It was everybody. We all looked out for each other, and Skip was a big part of that. I was in school, just like all the other kids were in school. We had, I believe, 2 different teachers. Sometimes, we had one. Danica, very studious. I don't think she ever left the schoolroom. And Fred, who was somewhere between Danica and me. He would have fun, but yet, he would take it seriously. But I took school very seriously, and I did all the same schoolwork and all the same hours, that they did, except I was a little bit older. So it felt like, I maybe wasn't there as much just because I had a car. When we were on break, I could, go take my car and, drive to the store and get a pack of gum. I just had a different level of independence than they did. Yeah, we were all in school together. The way that we got through some of the emotion and, and some of the tragedy and the intensity and some of, the real things that we knew, like with Dan and stuff that was about the war and stuff that was very much the opinion of the generation at that time. The only way we could really deal with it is by being kids. Because if you got sucked up in it, and it was too intense, then essentially you could let it really overtake you and kind of, just bring you down and really, buy into it. I think one part of it was just instinct of just keeping this, light and fun, and moving. And the other part of it was just because we were kids. And as much fun as that was, it was still work, even though we were playing, and we just wanted to go right back to goofing off, and having fun. However, when it was time to work, when it was time to get down, we would get down, and we would act, and we would be there, and we would be professional, and we would be on time, and we would show up, and we would know our lines, and we brought our A game. So even though as much as everyone talks about, it was fun, and it was lighthearted, and we were kids, and we'd go right from goofing off to working, whatever. It was without a doubt professional, and it was at a level that you had to be at, otherwise you just wouldn't be there. It was very much work when it was time to work. And then when it wasn't, we would just want to go be kids, and play, because waking up early, going to bed late, it's not, we weren't getting the opportunity, to just go, play in the street and play in the yard and, do a lot of stuff that normal kids do. So we have to find our normalcy and our adolescence and our youth and our childhood within a work environment. So wherever we could, make some fun, we were going to have some fun.